analogies and examples, but we don't have time, so we'll save those for another time. Right, and to see that even the essence of the inner mind does not ultimately exist as a separate, independent, fixed entity. Everything, including birth and death, are appearances of mind, as Lena was saying. And that mind is also not truly existent in the sense of being something fixed with characteristics that we can define in some way. I mean, here you are just giving yourself over to complete openness, just complete receptivity. You know, things are just vast and open, and you're not going to try to judge or define them in any way. That is the wisdom aspect that we can cultivate as we are dying. Rinpoche said, if we are able to combine both of these methods, that would be great. Then we can do taking and sending visualization, taking in the suffering, sending out the happiness, while we are in a state of recognizing things to be impermanent, fleeting, dreamlike, and illusory, like TV. Or we don't have to think about any of it if we can simply rest our mind peacefully in a meditative state without clinging to anything whatsoever. Rest following the breath, or rest in a state in which the mind is like space. That's fine too. That's a perfectly good way to go out of this lifetime. And so Rinpoche said this is how we need to die, with our mind calm, undistracted, and naturally settled, not lost to confusion. And what confusion means in this context, like the most accessible meaning in this context is emotionality, like not lost to fear, not lost to anger, not lost to being wrapped up in our suffering, not lost to wishing that we weren't dying, not lost to blaming somebody. Like just your mind is accepting what's happening and it is just resting, just as we would do in meditation, just following the breath, or just being present in the present moment. So those are all good ways that we can die. And then there's a next step. If you have a Lama, if you have a teacher that you look at as your teacher, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, it is said that within this state of calm abiding, this meditative state, we can also think that our mind is mixed with the Lama's mind. This is a very powerful technique of meditation at the time of death. So you don't really need more instruction than that. You can just call your Lama or your teacher. If you have a teacher that you feel is a realized teacher, whose presence can help you at the time of death, call that teacher to mind and think that your mind is the same as that teacher's mind. Your mind is permeated by the equanimity and the realization of that teacher's mind. And that's a very powerful technique for actually being able to realize that at the time of death. So Lama Norla Rinpoche said that because we are still, and this is the 1% thing again, because we are still sentient beings and have strong habitual patterns of perception, we will inevitably have some confusion at the time of death. It's not probably going to be a perfectly calm, unruffled experience. He said, and this is a really important instruction here, when confusion arises in our mind in the form of disturbing emotions, we just need to recognize that we are confused. Just think, okay, I'm confused, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm whatever I am. Just that gives you distance. Just to recognize it and be able to name it gives you distance from it. So recognize that we are confused and carry it on the path immediately by using it as a way to remember sentient beings with compassion. I'm dying, I feel really sad. Every sentient being dies. Every sentient being feels sad. You know, just feel compassion for all sentient beings. It's, you know, whatever your experience is, you can transpose that and use that as a way to cultivate compassion by remembering that you're not the only one. That's a really important thought to have whenever you're having any kind of suffering, any kind of adversity, especially when you're dying. I'm not the only one. This happens to everybody, and this is how they feel. This is how all beings feel when this happens to them. So that helps us give rise to both relative and ultimate bodhicitta. So why do we need these methods at the time of death? The Buddha taught that it is very important that we don't die in a state in which our mind is consumed by anger, desire, jealousy, and other mental afflictions. If our mind is in the grip of one of these strong emotions at the time of death, it will have a negative influence on our bardo experience and direct us to a less pleasant rebirth. So taking and sending at the time of death gives us a way to work with confusion and emotional afflictions as they arise, a way to channel them immediately into meditation and compassion. So whatever emotion comes up in these final moments as we're dying, we can remember that other beings experience it too. I must have read ahead. And make that wish that all the confusion, anger, jealousy, and negative emotions of all beings be collected into ours so that they can be free of it and we can send them our happiness and merit. So that is how you cultivate compassion at the moment of death, using negativity that's arising in your own mind. You think, may all the suffering of all beings that is the same as the suffering that I'm having, may I take it on now and may they be free of it, may they not have it. So that's another option at the time of death. And he said, so this is the basic instruction. Like, we have all these methods we can use now at the time that we're dying. We have like a whole list of things. You know, you're going to have it written on your arm or something so that you can call it to mind. But you can boil it down to two really simple instructions. If, at the time that you know you're dying, you're having a lot of pain and suffering and confusion, then you can apply the antidote of taking and sending and generate compassion for sentient beings. So if you're not familiar with taking and sending, it's not something you're comfortable with doing in that context, just think of other sentient beings and that they're suffering too, and focus on compassion for them. And that will lessen your negative emotionality towards your own suffering. However, if when you're dying, and this could happen, I've seen it happen, if your mind is fairly calm at that time, then just rest with that. Just let the mind rest naturally, settled. And if we wish, we can bring into it that additional element of experiencing our mind as mixed with the Lama's mind. It always helps to bring your teacher. If you have a realized teacher, bring your teacher to mind and just bask in the presence of that teacher while resting in a state where your mind is calm and settled. And whichever state our mind is in, whether it's confusion or whether it's calmness, through these instructions we can use that state of mind to benefit ourselves and to benefit others in a very powerful way. So either thing that we do, both Trungpa Rinpoche and Lama Norla Rinpoche assure us that this will be a cause for us to bring great benefit to others in the future if we practice like this. And it will be a cause of great benefit for ourselves as we continue to travel the path to ultimate enlightenment. So it's always said that we work for the two benefits, benefiting ourselves and benefiting others. And through benefiting others, through thinking of the benefit of others, we automatically benefit ourselves. So we're never like giving it all away. It always comes back to us in the form of benefit for ourselves as well. So finally, we're tying things up here, finally from the commentary from Jamgon Kongtrul, going back to that original 19th century commentary on the Great Path of Awakening, he said, this concludes the special instructions for the time of death. And he says that there are many other well-known instructions for the time of death, and if you travel this particular path, you could encounter a lot of them. He says, none are more wonderful than these. So in general, and this is how Lama Norla Rinpoche tied things up, in general, the point of the 5 strengths is that we need to practice however we can while we are still alive, and we have those 5 strengths to help us organize ourselves, and also practice however we can at the time of death. Again, we have the 5 strengths to help us, but whatever practice we have in our lives, do that as much as you can in your life and at the time of death. So if we can remember the 5 powers during our lifetime and as we're dying, they will empower us in all situations without exception. And that completes the teaching on the 5 strengths or powers. Does anybody have any questions? We'll do some meditation. I'll introduce you to taking and sending, and we'll do some meditation. We still have a little bit of time. So if anybody has any questions, I could take those now and do my best with them. And if not, we'll just go on to meditation.
I have one question.